One denial, one conversation over dinner, one silent promise, and a year later, Justice walked through the front door in a business suit. A warm Sunday afternoon sun hung lazily in the sky, casting a golden hue across the city streets. It was the kind of Sunday that invited people to slow down to breathe, to laugh, to enjoy small things. The bustle of downtown was softened by the warmth in the air, and the rhythm of weekend life moved at half its usual speed. On the corner of Maple and Fifth, an upscale restaurant stood with polished glass doors and sleek black awnings. Its name was etched in elegant gold lettering, Alder and Rose, a place known for artisan plating, minimalist decor, and unspoken rules about who belonged. Across the street, a black family stood waiting for the pedestrian light to change. The father, tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a crisp white polo and slacks, rested a hand on his daughter's back. The mother, graceful in a soft green blouse and denim skirt, held her purse loosely at her side, eyes scanning the wine menu posted outside the restaurant. Their daughter, maybe 15 or 16, wore braided pigtails and a confident smile. She was mid-sentence, animatedly talking about her latest school project in hospitality management, something about food, justice, and inclusivity. Her parents listened with easy affection, laughing occasionally, offering gentle teases and proud nods. They had been meaning to come here for months. It was one of those places you heard about in magazines, recommended in whispers and on polished Instagram pages. Next Sunday, the father had said once, then another. Life had a way of pushing plans back, but not today. The light turned green. They crossed as they stepped inside Alder and Rose. The air changed. It was cooler, smoother. Jazz spilled gently from hidden speakers, mingling with the soft clink of cutlery and murmured conversations. Glasses sparkled under pendant lighting, and white napkins were folded like origami on each table. There was no loud welcome, no bustle of greetings, just a poised silence, like a museum. The mother exhaled, quietly impressed. It's beautiful in here, she said. The father smiled. Told you it'd be worth the wait. Their daughter nodded, eyes darting across the room. Can we sit by the window? She whispered. They approached the hostess stand. A young white woman, probably in her early 20s, stood with perfect posture behind a tablet. Her blonde hair was pulled into a tight bun, her expression smooth and neutral. The father smiled warmly. Hi there. We're hoping to get a table for 3. The hostess hesitated. Her eyes flicked over them, briefly before landing back on the tablet. She tapped a few times, though nothing on the screen seemed to change. I'm sorry, she said, voice crisp. We're fully booked today. A pause. The mother glanced around the room. Several tables were visibly empty. A couple near the bar was just getting up, their plates cleared, leaving a spotless white tablecloth behind them. Really? The father asked, keeping his tone friendly. We don't mind waiting, if that helps. We saw a few open spots. The hostess's smile. Thin. Unfortunately, those are reserved for our regular guests. We're prioritizing pre-booked parties today. She said it like a memorized script, polite, polished, final. There was a stillness in the momentary, invisible shift. The daughter's face fell, just slightly. She looked at her mother, then back at the tables. But it's not even full, honey. Her mother interrupted gently, resting a hand on her shoulder. The father's expression didn't change, but something behind his eyes did. His voice stayed even, calm. No problem at all. Thank you. They turned slowly. As they walked out, the father offered the hostess a nod. She returned it, mechanically. Outside, the warmth of the sun felt different somehow. Brighter, sharper. The daughter spoke first. That was weird, right? Like, she didn't even look at us properly. The mother kept walking. It's all right. We'll find somewhere else. But there were tables, I know, her father said quietly. Silence fell between them. As they walked past store windows and outdoor cafes, the city hadn't changed, but the moment had. No raised voices, no arguments, just quiet dignity, and the bitter taste of being reminded without words that even a smile can be used to deny someone's place at the table. They kept walking, step by step, together, and though none of them said it aloud, something had shifted, something had begun. The subtle disrespect moment they stepped inside Alder and Rose. It felt like walking into a different world, sleek, curated, and cold. The space smelled faintly of lemon zest and roasted garlic. Soft jazz fluttered through the air like a secret. A few tables buzzed with gentle laughter and quiet conversations, but many were noticeably unoccupied. Empty water glasses, and unused bread plates sitting like props on a stage. The family approached the front podium, where a young hostess stood. Behind a sleek digital tablet, she wore a tailored black dress and a name tag that read Caitlin. Her face was pleasant, but unreadable. The kind of practiced expression that comes from years of customer service. She saw them coming, and for a fraction of a second so quick most wouldn't notice her polite smile flickered. Not gone entirely, but dimmed, like someone turning a dial just enough to make you question whether it was ever bright to begin. With the father, ever. The gentleman offered a warm nod. Good afternoon. Table for 3, please. Caitlin's fingers grazed the tablet, but she didn't tap anything, didn't scroll, didn't glance at the screen with intent. Instead, she looked directly at them, then over their shoulders, as if searching for someone else more expected. I'm sorry, she said, her voice smooth but clipped. We're fully booked for the afternoon. The words dropped like a stone into a still pond. The father glanced past her, toward the dining room. There were at least 4 empty tables. He didn't need to guess, he could see them. To by the windows, one in the center, and another in the corner, set for 4, but vacant. Untouched. He turned back with gentle persistence. We don't mind waiting, if that helps. Looks like a few folks just left. Caitlin's jaw tightened. Though only slightly, her smile returned, but it was tighter now, no longer friendly. Just professional. It's not going to be possible today, she said, her tone cool. We're prioritizing our usual clientele. There it was, wrapped in polished words, spoken with a customer service cadence, but no less clear. The mother shifted slightly. Her eyes met Caitlin's for just a second longer than necessary. A quiet exchange passed between them, not of words, but of knowledge. The daughter looked around, confused. But there's, her mother placed a gentle hand on her arm. It's fine, the mother said calmly. Her voice was measured, almost too calm, like a glass of water held perfectly still while hands trembled. Beneath it, she turned to the hostess. Thank you anyway. And just like that, they walked out, not hurried, not ashamed, just steady. Outside, the city felt louder, like the noise had returned all at once. Waiting for them beyond the restaurant doors. The daughter blinked up at her parents, still trying to process. Was it because of us? Neither answered. The father kept his gaze ahead, jaw tight. The mother adjusted her purse strap and reached for her daughter's hand. Her fingers were warm, but tense, protective. The silence said what their words didn't. Because how do you explain something like that? How do you explain to a teenager full of ambition and big dreams that people might not see her the way she sees herself, not because of what she said or did or wore, but simply because she walked through the wrong door with the wrong skin? The daughter let out a small sigh, trying to smile. Maybe they really were full. Her voice was hopeful. She needed it to be true. The father finally spoke. His voice was low, even. They weren't. They kept walking. The mother glanced sideways at a man holding the door for a white couple entering another restaurant. He smiled warmly, said something that made them laugh. Her eyes shifted forward again. A group of college students passed them, loud and carefree. Across the street, a street musician played the saxophone under a wide-brimmed hat, his case open and nearly empty. Let's find somewhere else, the mother said softly. They turned the corner and kept moving, but the rhythm of their walk had changed. Their daughter, usually the most talkative, had gone quiet. She stared at her feet, one step at a time, as if she were suddenly too aware of every inch of sidewalk beneath her. No one said it out loud, but the moment had settled into their bones. That restaurant visit had meant more than just a meal. It had been a small celebration and affirmation that they belonged anywhere they chose to be, that their presence didn't need permission, but what they got instead was a reminder, one wrapped in smiles and soft voices, but sharp all the same. They didn't make a scene. They didn't raise their voices. They didn't ask for apologies or explanations. But something had been taken, and quietly, without even knowing it yet, they had decided they were going to take something back. Not with anger, with purpose. Seeds of purpose's sun had long since dipped below the skyline by the time they sat down for dinner. Inside their home, modest but warm, with soft amber lighting and framed photos of family trips, the clatter of plates and the hum of the dishwasher filled the silence. They ate quietly at first. The dining table was set like it always was. Cloth napkins folded neatly, glasses filled with water and lemon, a dish of roasted chicken and wild rice at the center. The daughter picked at her food, not out of disrespect, but distraction. Her mind was still back at Alder and Rose, stuck on the chill in that hostess's voice, on the way her father's smile had faltered just for a second. The mother finally broke the silence. It wasn't about the food. Her tone was even, almost reflective. She didn't sound angry, just tired. The kind of tired that comes from years of pushing past closed doors. The father nodded slightly, chewing slowly. It never is. The daughter looked up from her plate. But we didn't do anything wrong. No, her mother said, her voice calm. We didn't. Her father leaned back in his chair, eyes scanning the ceiling as if searching for words. He'd said too many times before, some people, he said, see you walking, and their first instinct isn't curiosity, it's calculation. They look at your skin and subtract possibility. The daughter frowned. But that restaurant wasn't supposed to be inclusive? I thought that was their thing. The mother gave a dry chuckle. Inclusivity looks different on paper than it does at the door. Another silence settled, but this time, it was thoughtful. Not wounded sharpening. The daughter finally said, softly, what if we could do something? Both parents looked at her. She continued, sitting up straighter now. What if we didn't just let it go? Not with anger, but, I don't know, with intention. Her father raised an eyebrow. Intention, she shrugged, but her eyes were steady. You always said we're not powerless. There was again that quiet shift in the air, something intangible, like the moment before a spark catches. The mother reached for her water glass. You've been studying hospitality, haven't you? The daughter nodded. Yeah. And one of the case studies we did last semester was about racial bias in luxury dining. We talked about gatekeeping, encoded language, how people hide discrimination behind phrases like dress code or regular clientele. The father smiled faintly. I remember you were writing something about that last month. I still am, she said, now more animated, and I think I want to expand it, make it personal. The mother gave her a look half concern, half pride. Be careful, she said gently. I will, she replied. The father pushed his plate aside and leaned in. You know, he began slowly, I've been thinking about expanding into commercial property again. The mother turned to him, surprised. Since when? He shrugged. I've been watching some spaces downtown, quiet ones, especially around the culinary district. It's funny, places like Alder and Rose are all flash and polish, but some of them aren't as stable. As they look, the margins are thinner than you'd think. The daughter blinked. Are you saying you're, what, looking to buy a restaurant? He didn't answer right away, but there was something different in his eyes. Not revenge, not even defiance, something colder, cleaner, strategic. The mother looked thoughtful. You know, she said softly, I've still got all the contacts. From when I was running the catering business, some of those chefs would kill to be part of something new. Something that doesn't just look inclusive but is. Her words lingered. The daughter leaned forward, eyes wide. Wait, are we really talking about this? Like, actually doing something? Not yet, her father said. Just talking. But even as he said it, the tone had changed. The table felt less like a family dinner and more like the early stages of a blueprint. No one raised their voice. No one pounded the table or stormed off in protest. But there was a quiet resolve thick in the air, stronger than any outburst could have been. They weren't just hurt. They were thinking. And what they were thinking wasn't about one hostess or one afternoon. It was about the system that made that moment possible and how to quietly, deliberately disrupt it. The daughter glanced across the table at her parents. She saw it now, the gears turning behind calm eyes, the shared understanding. A plan was forming, not a plan for vengeance, but for something much harder, something lasting. A year later, an unexpected visit. Afternoon sun filtered through the tall windows of Alder and Rose, casting warm, golden patterns across polished floors and empty wine glasses. It was a typical Friday midway through the lunch rush, and the restaurant buzzed with low, elegant chatter. Forks clinked gently against porcelain, napkins were smoothed over laps, and servers glided between tables with the rehearsed rhythm of a ballet. To the casual observer, nothing seemed amiss, but behind the scenes, tension simmered beneath the polished surface. In the back office, Julian, the general manager, sat hunched over spreadsheets and performance reports, lips pressed in a thin line. For months, profits had been declining, not fast enough to cause panic, but steadily, unmistakably. Too many empty seats on weekdays, too many regulars slipping away quietly. The glow that Alder and Rose once carried in the city's food scene was beginning to dim. Then came the knock. A soft tap on the door, followed by a voice from the floor manager. Julian, there's a group here for the scheduled meeting. Julian frowned. Meeting? They said it was confirmed. 3 of them, they're in the front. He glanced at the calendar. His assistant had scribbled investor follow-up, 1:30 p.m. in the margin. He'd nearly forgotten. With a sigh, he straightened his collar, brushed his jacket, and stepped into the ambient quiet of the dining area. His shoes clicked across the marble floor as he moved toward the entrance, rehearsing lines about brand, vision, and expansion potential. But as he rounded the corner, he froze. Standing just inside the entrance were 3 figures: a man, a woman, and a young adult woman, no longer a teenager, but confident and composed. Julian's breath caught. It was them, the same family from nearly a year ago. The ones he remembered only vaguely. A brief conversation with Caitlin, who later mentioned turning them away. Something about prioritizing regulars. He hadn't thought much of it then. He had a business to run. But now, here they were, not in casual clothes, but in crisp business attire. The father in a tailored navy suit, posture calm but assertive. The mother in a deep burgundy blazer, a sleek leather portfolio in hand, and the daughter, hair pulled back in a low bun. A silver tablet tucked under her arm stood beside them, with a quiet fire in her eyes. They weren't here to dine. They were here on business, Mr. Julian, the mother said, her tone measured, professional. He nodded slowly. Yes, I believe we had something on the books. She extended a file toward him. Julian accepted it, still trying to piece together the edges of this puzzle. He opened the folder and scanned the first few pages. What he saw made his stomach tighten. Investor agreement, equity proposal, signed documentation of partial ownership acquisition. His eyes jumped to the final page, a notarized letter, dated and sealed, indicating that a private group had recently purchased a minority stake in Alder, and rose a group that included 3 names, listed clearly. He looked up, stunned. The father offered a small, polite smile. You've been searching for silent partners, haven't you? Julian nodded, trying to maintain his composure. We've had a few inquiries, but nothing finalized until now, the mother said gently. The daughter stepped forward. We reviewed the numbers. Foot traffic's down, social media engagement has plateaued, and customer retention among your core demographic is slipping. You've been holding on by reputation, but reputation only lasts so long without purpose. She said it without malice, just fact. Julian felt heat rise in his neck. You're in hospitality? The daughter gave a modest smile, studying it. But I've been watching this place for months. Patterns don't lie. The silence between them stretched. Julian was used to reading people. Investors came in all types: sharks, dreamers, old money dressed in polo shirts. But this was different. There was no arrogance, no posturing. Just presence and precision. How did this happen? He asked, genuinely curious now. The father exchanged a glance with his wife, then answered, You gave us a gift that day. Julian blinked. You reminded us that we still live in a world where access is filtered, sometimes by skin, sometimes by assumptions. That reminder sparked something. We realized we didn't just want a seat at the table. We wanted to own the table. The mother added, We've spent this year building relationships, reaching out to community lenders, leveraging contacts, my catering background, his real estate experience, her research. We didn't come to prove a point. We came to build something better. Julian swallowed hard. He had no rebuttal. The daughter tilted her head. You said yes to the investment proposal last week. You just didn't know who was behind it. And now he did. They didn't come to be seated. They came to reshape the room. The twist. More than just money. Julian sat across from them now. The file still open in front of him, though the pages were no longer the focus. What mattered was the room itself, how it had shifted, how the balance of power had changed. He cleared his throat. I have to admit, this is highly unconventional. The father smiled gently. Isn't it? The mother leaned forward, her tone measured but firm, but not impulsive, not reckless, just precise. Julian looked at them carefully. You didn't just show up with money, did you? No. The daughter said, her voice calm but unwavering. We showed up with purpose. Nearly a year earlier, the same evening they were turned away, the daughter had sat in her room and begun to write. At first, it had been a journal entry, a way to process the ache of subtle humiliation. But it quickly turned into something more a formal case study for one of her courses. The illusion of inclusion, racial bias in modern hospitality. She didn't name the restaurant directly. She didn't have to. The description of the atmosphere, the coded language, the quiet refusal despite empty tables, it resonated with something far deeper than any single location. It resonated with experience. Her professor was so moved by the piece. She shared it with a few colleagues in the department. One forwarded it to an alumni investor in socially conscious startups who had once walked out of a restaurant for refusing to seat his wife. That alum happened to be a venture capitalist. A few months later, the daughter received an invitation to speak on a university panel, then another to collaborate on a project that supported minority-owned restaurant ventures. While she was writing, her father had quietly begun tracking Alder and Rose's financial footprint. A new leasing agent he worked with had hinted that the restaurant's real estate was under review. Rent was high, their profit margins were razor-thin, and the neighborhood had started shifting new competitors, changing foot traffic, online reviews dipping ever so slightly. He didn't move immediately. He watched the location, watched the branding, watched how it failed to evolve. When the restaurant posted a discreet call for investors through a boutique firm, he was ready, but he didn't approach them directly. He spoke with the firm. He ran it through a holding company, co-founded with his wife and daughter. Quiet, professional, intentional. The mother had perhaps changed the most. After the incident, she dusted off her old contacts from her catering days, people who remembered her food, her events, her standards. She began consulting for small businesses, restaurants, cafes, culinary startups that wanted to improve service and expand their reach. It started as freelance work, but soon, word of mouth brought more than she could handle alone. She wasn't just running numbers or suggesting menus. She was helping business owners reshape their entire service ethos. How to treat people, how to notice details, how to make everyone feel they belonged. So, when the family sat at that table in front of Julian now, it wasn't just about reclaiming dignity. It was about raising the standard. We didn't come back for revenge, the daughter said, folding her arms on the table. We came back because people like us deserve more than being tolerated. We deserve spaces designed with us in mind. Julian ran a hand through his hair. He wasn't defensive anymore. He was listening, truly listening for the first time. So, what do you want from us now? He asked cautiously. You already have part of the business. The father gave a slow, thoughtful nod. We want transformation from the inside out. The mother opened her leather folder and slid over a single sheet, a proposal not for financial restructuring, but for cultural reconstruction, staff diversity training, a community table initiative for underserved groups, collaborations with Black-owned wineries and farms, quarterly events led by culinary students from marginalized backgrounds, a hospitality mentorship program in partnership with the daughter's university. Julian blinked. You want to turn Alder and Rose into a teaching restaurant? Into a learning restaurant? The mother corrected. One where mistakes weren't denied, but examined. One where service wasn't about control, but connection. Julian looked down at the proposal, then back up at them. The family sat still, not pushing, not begging, just waiting. He saw something in them that he hadn't expected. Not anger, not ego, conviction. The daughter tilted her head slightly, the faintest edge in her voice. You asked us last year to wait for a table. A pause. She smiled. So we waited. We just chose a different table. They didn't come back for a reservation. They came back for a revolution. Not loud, not angry, just undeniable. The kind that doesn't just change menus or decor, but mindsets. 3 weeks later, the doors of Alder and Rose reopened. But this time, they opened to something different. The name above the awning remained the same, etched in gold against matte black. But everything beneath it had changed. The atmosphere hummed, not just with elegance, but with warmth. Music still floated gently from the speakers, but now, so did laughter from a wider range of guests. The air no longer whispered exclusivity. It breathed invitation. Gone were the silent signals that used to guard the space like invisible walls. Now, they were replaced with something honest. A menu that paid tribute to cultural flavors. A new section near the entrance highlighting featured artists from the community, walls adorned not with curated ambiguity, but with stories, photographs of local farms, smiling chefs in training, and handwritten quotes about food, family, and identity. Inside the dining room, the staff bustled with quiet confidence. They were young and old, black, white, Latino, Asian, some with tattoos and bright hair, others with crisp vests and pressed aprons. Their differences were no longer hidden. They were celebrated. The hostess at the front wore braids. Her smile was easy, genuine. "Welcome to Alder and Rose," she said, her tone sincere. "Do you have a reservation?" The mother nodded, smiling softly. "Yes, for 3, of course," the hostess replied, checking her list. "Right this way. We reserved our best table for you." As they walked through the restaurant, other staff greeted them with nods and warm glances. No more flickers of suspicion, no more polite dismissals, just recognition. They were known. They were home. The table was tucked by the window, where soft natural light poured in and framed the room like a painting. The same spot the daughter had once pointed at with hope in her voice. This time, no one hesitated. They sat down, menus handed to them with care. The daughter looked around quietly. She noticed small things, how the servers moved with intention, how the guests looked comfortable in their own skin. She saw an older couple across the room, speaking Spanish and laughing gently over a shared plate. Near the bar, a young woman in a hijab sipped mocktail spritz, chatting with a group of culinary students in matching aprons. Everything felt alive, not curated, not posed. Real. She leaned closer to her father and whispered, "Feels different now." Her father looked around slowly, then met her eyes. "Because it is," he said. Their server arrived with a wide grin, a young man in his 20s, his accent southern. His name tag reading Marcus, culinary intern. He introduced the specials with passion, sharing how he'd helped develop the spice blend on the smoked lamb dish. When he stepped away, the mother leaned back, eyes misty. "Did you see the mentorship program flyer at the entrance?" she asked. "That's hers." She nodded toward her daughter. "All her idea." The daughter gave a half smile. "Modest but proud, just planting seeds." "Seeds become roots," the mother replied. As they waited for their meal, the father unfolded a leather folder from his briefcase, handing each of them a single page. The daughter read the title aloud, Phase 2, Community Table Project. Beneath it were plans for a monthly event, meals donated to local shelters, tables reserved for underrepresented groups in the food industry, and rotating menus designed by culinary students from historically black colleges and universities. "People shouldn't need to prove they belong in a place like this," he said. "We're going to make sure they never have to." His voice didn't rise. It didn't need to die in this room. Their presence was no longer radical. It was respected. The food arrived. The plates were works of art, bold colors, aromatic herbs, dishes inspired by soul food, Caribbean spices, French technique, fusion done right, not for trend, but for truth. As they tasted the food, the flavors were complex, layered, like the journey that brought them here. Later, as the sun began to set and golden light bathed the room, the daughter looked out the window and caught sight of a young black couple. Hesitating at the front door, they peeked inside, uncertain. The hostess spotted them, smiled brightly, and stepped out to greet them. "No reservation," she said. "That's okay, we always save a few tables. Come on in." The couple relaxed visibly, stepping inside. The daughter turned back toward her parents. Neither spoke, but they didn't need to. There was peace in the silence, gratitude, and something else. Legacy. Moral of the story: true power doesn't always come in noise or confrontation. Sometimes it comes in grace, in choosing to rebuild where you were once rejected. They didn't fight for a seat at someone else's table. They built their own, and then made sure there were chairs for everyone. Revenge can be loud, but building something better in silence, that's legacy. Later that night, after the family's dinner at Alder and Rose, the city outside glimmered in soft amber light. The streets pulsed with the rhythm of weekend life, cars passing, music rising faintly from somewhere nearby, and the quiet hush of evening settling into the buildings. They walked together now, father, mother, and daughter, shoulder to shoulder, not speaking at first. There was no need. The kind of silence between them wasn't empty. It was full of meaning, of memory, of something sacred. The restaurant sat behind them like a sealed chapter. It still bore the same name, the same walls, but everything within it had changed. And they had been the change. Not with noise, not with protest signs or hashtags or viral videos, but with something more dangerous to a broken system: patience and precision. The daughter, walking a few steps ahead, turned around and walked backward for a moment, facing them. She grinned, wind tugging at the edges of her blazer. Do you think they know? Her mother raised a brow. Know what? That they almost erased something beautiful that day. Her father gave a small, thoughtful smile. Doesn't matter. Why not? Because legacy doesn't need recognition. It just needs to last. It would have been easy, a year ago, to lash out, to post a video, to call for boycotts, to gather angry voices and flood the internet with stories of subtle racism and denied access, and maybe that would have worked for a while. Maybe they would have embarrassed the restaurant into issuing a hollow apology, offered them a free meal, a photo op, AP or patch over a rotting floorboard. But they didn't want a table born out of pity. They wanted the foundation to change. They wanted the entire building, its mission, its culture, its soul to be remade with truth at its center. And so they moved in silence. The daughter remembered those months clearly. Long nights hunched over case studies, rewriting the same paragraph 5 times because it had to be perfect. Early morning calls with her university advisor. Her first presentation in front of alumni. Palms sweaty, voice steady. The day she got that email from the venture capitalist. This isn't just research. It's a blueprint. She didn't scream into the void. She architected a future. The mother remembered the conversation she'd had in whispered corners of cafes, connecting with chefs who had been told for years that their food was too ethnic, that their names were too unfamiliar, that their skin was a liability to investors. She remembered every story, every time someone had said, maybe the city just isn't ready. She knew better now. The city had always been ready. It just hadn't been asked properly. The father remembered every time he walked past Alder and Rose during those early months, pausing just long enough to see if they were still busy, still full, still arrogant. He remembered what it felt like to wait, to play the long game, to say no to ego and yes to impact. People talk about power like it's noise, like it's the sharpest voice in the room, but real power doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it walks in quietly, takes a seat, and changes everything from within. What they did wasn't revenge. It was design. And design endures. Weeks after the reopening, word began to spread about the mentorship program that helped local students step into hospitality careers, about the farm-to-table partnerships with Black and Indigenous farmers, about the young chef who was given full creative control of a new seasonal menu and used that platform to serve dishes from her Caribbean grandmother's handwritten recipe book. People began to notice, not because a press release told them to, but because they could feel it. The space was different now. Alive. Whole. And in the quiet corners of that transformation stood a family who never raised their voices, but raised the standard. In a world that often confuses visibility with victory. Their story was a reminder. You don't always need to be loud to be heard. Sometimes the most powerful statement is not made on a stage, but in a seat someone once told you didn't deserve. The daughter looked back at the building one more time, hand tucked into her coat pocket. It's funny, she said. I thought revenge would feel better. Her mother smiled. That's because this isn't revenge, her father added. This is redemption. The quiet kind. She nodded slowly, the truth sinking in not just in her mind, but in her bones. Because true power isn't in retaliation. It's in transformation. The kind that outlives anger, outshines ego, and outlasts injustice.